Hey guys, welcome to another edition in the special limited series on the Off the Cuff show. This is, of course, the handcuffs owned by Glenn, who was nice enough to bring him some of the jewels of his collection over to the house. And in this episode, we're going to look at 3 different types of cuffs that you'll see why. For some reason, in my mind, I actually grouped these kinds together because of their scarcity and the time period they were made. We're going to be looking at handcuffs and thumb cuffs made by Gill. These are Tower Lion thumb cuffs, and these are George Wood. Okay, these are about 1913, 1912, these are 1903, and these came in the 30s. So they span about 30 years, but to me, their style always reminded me of the gangsters in the 1930s movies. I don't know why. The Gill cuff here, this actually predates the Lion Tamer or the Flash Action Manacle. Okay, because we know that because it's only stamped Gill cuff with the Kansas City, Missouri, where they were made. And it's very interesting because this one has a serial number of 4. That's right, 4. And it doesn't have a date, but it does says patented on the back. We're talking, this is the 4th cuff this dude made, okay, and stamped. He probably kept number 1 for himself, as a source of pride or whatever, but this is number 4, okay, so that's just amazing to have a serial number that low. There's no connecting chain, obviously. It's a solid cuff. It's sort of Gill's answer to the Bean Giant, and it takes a single bit key. Pretty cool. And it's just a standard operation. Boom, boom, and like that, and it just opens. It's kind of like a giant version of his thumb cuffs. I mean, seriously, it's like with the addition of these serrated edges in here, which are particularly nasty, it's just a giant version of thumb cuffs. How cool is that? These are pretty hard to find, but I mean impossible to find with that serial number. Gill had a flair for naming his cuffs. These are called Lion Tamer cuffs. Good luck getting them on a lion. And this is the original box that they came. And it's like a thick cardboard, but there's the picture. How cool is that? Thumb or finger cuff. Kansas City, Missouri, there you go. And they're only $3 back then. And if you have a pair of these, I'll give you $3 for them. Same operation as, other thumb cuffs. Boom. And boom. But these are actually pretty sharp. A lot of thumb cuffs, they have the serrated edges, but they're still rounded a bit for a little bit of comfort. These are not. These would actually hurt. You could cut yourself on these. When they filed them in, they did not worry. They wanted them sharp. So those are the Lion Tamers. These are the Flash Action. I don't know what the difference between the two was. Maybe it was just a marketing thing. Maybe he just decided to change the name. Maybe there's an internal change that we can't tell, and it doesn't really, matter, because both of them have no post. Instead, the key penetrates all the way through the lock case. So there's really not much difference. Size, same thing. Boom. Position a keyway, all that is the same on these. But he just changed the name. Like Frank Buck, the Lion Tamer of the 1930s, kids. Alright, now these are the Tower Lion thumb cuffs. They can come completely apart, but we're not going to do that because it's a little tricky to get them back together, and you don't really need to take them apart. And instead of modern thumb cuffs that would swing that way, and that's how they would lock in an up and down motion, the sides push in. And there's little pyramid shaped cuts and just about everywhere you look in these thumb cuffs. Okay, so We know this actually, I don't know if you can see it, but this part here, it reminds me of my grandmother's meat tenderizer. She used to have this hammer in the kitchen made out of aluminum that she would pound steaks with. She would pound her meat. Grandma would pound her meat in the kitchen with a meat tenderizer, and both sides of the mount were these kind of spiky things. So every time I see these, I think of my grandmother's pounding her meat, her tenderizer. And that is not dirty, even though it sounds like it. It takes a very teeny tiny and strange looking key. It's got a fork in it, almost like a pitchfork, and it's very thin. Okay, now obviously it's adjustable, and then you would just turn the key one way to loosen the one side and the other way to loosen the other. These are really solid too. The steel is very high quality, and these are quite rare. And these also say patent pending. Strangely, they're not marked Tower Lion, but we know they are. And these actually once belonged to a great escape artist named Earl Lockman. And you can look him up. I think I did a video on some of the stuff I got from the Lockman collection, and when I did some of the appraisals for them, when they auctioned off some of his handcuffs. And I have a Lockman board, which is another story. But anyway, yeah, these are really cool.
The final cuff that we're going to look at in this episode is the ones by George Wood, and these were made in around 1913. The ones that have the patent dates on them do say 1913. These don't have the patent dates on them, so we're assuming they're earlier, just like a patent pending mark would be. These are known as chain cuffs because they use chains to secure each hand. There's a push button here, and you would just adjust it to the prisoner's wrist and then push the button and it would lock, which I did on this one, but I put it way over so that we'd have more room to show you how the chain goes through. And once it's locked, it's not going anywhere. Basically, it's a plunger type thing that goes through the links of the chain, wherever they end up. It's like there's no ratchet or whatever. Each link of the chain can be locked on each one, so there's a big variety of ways that you could secure somebody. Alright? And of course it won't go all the way through. It's attached in here. Now, the key is really unusual for these guys. What we'll do is we'll lock it by pushing that button. Locked. And the key is really funky looking. It's almost like a giant hypodermic needle. It's cut the same way at an angle. And you just turn it in, put it in, and you're gonna spin it until you're gonna feel it plunge in a little bit deeper. And sometimes you gotta turn it a few times or whatever. And there it goes down further. It just went further into the lock case. And when I turn it more, boom, it pops a little plunger, and you can move the chain back and forth. That's simple. These cuffs are becoming rarer and rarer. You know, it's aluminum case, and Glenn and I were talking earlier about just wondering how many of these, like, if your dad was a cop and you were a kid growing up, you know, in like the 1930s and you needed a bike lock, just, you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of what these resemble. Or even a dog collar, but mostly like bike locks. And I could just imagine how many of these things were cut with bolt cutters over the year, or hacksaws, because they're getting rarer and harder to find every single year. Great piece in his collection. It even says Elmira, New York, where they were made, patented by George A. Wood. Those are the Woods with the very unusual key. Finding original keys to these things is like next to impossible, and it's really, there's not much tolerance in there. It's a pretty secure cuff when you get right down to it. So, all right, so we have the Woods, we have the Gills, and we have the oddball tower thumb cuffs in this one. The different versions of the thumb cuffs are they're not as scarce at all as the handcuffs. It's much easier to find these, you know, in different sales or whatnot than it is to find the handcuffs. Which is why I don't have a pair yet. I do have a pair of the thumb cuffs, but not the handcuffs. That's it for this episode. Tune in again next week, and we're going to be looking at something else special from Glenn's collection. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, do all that kind of stuff. Leave your comments in the comments section. If you have any cuffs that you want to feature, just let me know, because the address is up at the end of the video. All right, and we'll see you next time.